And for the United States, at the end of the day, very few of the people we captured believe we would ever kill them in cold blood. So it's, I personally don't think what we do is torture. I also don't think it's very effective because at the end of the day, they figure they just got to suck it up, endure it, and the Americans won't kill them at the end of the day.
Well, and, I've never been tortured, but they call it the fate worse than death itself, and I could see how someone being tortured would end up just saying, whatever they're supposed to say, whatever they think they're supposed to say. In fact, there was a news story last week about some team-building operation at some sales company in Washington State or something, where they held this kid on a downward slope on a hill and poured water all over his face. And his quote to the local press was, "Boy, I would have told him whatever he wanted me to say," was his description of what it was like to be drowned.
Well, even, I think I saw that story too. At the end of the day, the big problem for us is not how we elicit the information. It's more that how Al-Qaeda trains its people to mislead us by either providing fabricated information or a great deal of true and factual information and accurate information that leads us nowhere because it's dated. So that's one of the big problems. When I was managing the operations, my goal was to get as many people off the street as I could. I didn't worry a lot about interrogation. I didn't really care. Now, I might have been dead wrong about that. General Hayden has said recently that it's a very lucrative source of intelligence. So I guess there's differing views on this.
Are you inclined to take Hayden's word for it?
I am, because Hayden and Admiral McConnell have delivered intelligence estimates that must have made Cheney's blood pressure go right through his ears. Saying that we had utterly failed to defeat Al-Qaeda. And most recently, Hayden has said, Al-Qaeda can now beat the tens of billions of dollars of electronic detection equipment we've installed at official crossing points. And you have to remember they delivered that estimate that said the Iranian nuclear threat really wasn't. Mm-hmm. So I have a great deal more respect for McConnell and Hayden than I ever did for Tenet.
Well, that part isn't hard. They've also seemed, especially McConnell seems to have exaggerated. Isn't he the guy that told the Congress, there's a terrorist threat against your very lives in this building if you don't pass whichever spy bill it was?
Well, that's certainly true, and I think there's less evil involved in that than there is desperation. The fact that we've done nothing to control our borders means that we don't know who's in this country. We don't know what they're doing. And my position, my estimate at least on domestic surveillance is less evil than desperate. They're trolling for information, hoping that they're going to uncover a plot before the bomb can be set off. But because they're so politically cowardly, they won't take on the issue of effective border control.
Now, I'm sorry, back on the subject of the waterboarding and so forth, you've called the U.S. invasion of Iraq the hope for an unexpected gift to Al-Qaeda. And one of the stories about the lead up to this war is that a guy named Libbi was sent to Egypt and tortured into saying that Saddam Hussein, see, they even did it to me, that Saddam Hussein had helped teach Osama bin Laden's guys how to hijack planes, how to make and disperse chemical and biological weapons and so forth. Do you suspect that bin Laden wanted the guy to say that, or it was just the Americans wanted the guy to say that?
Well, certainly that's what they're trained to do, is to provide that kind of information. And that guy was a very senior fellow. He was clearly savvy of how the world was going when he was captured. My suspicion is that he played the role of the jihadi while he was in prison. He fed us information we wanted to hear and information he knew we wouldn't question too closely. And then afterwards, he recanted it.
And now, I mentioned briefly before, and it is something we've talked about before, but I guess I'd like to give you a chance again, because the poll numbers still reflect the fact that your narrative, the impression you would like to leave people with or somehow get through their thick skull is, somewhere along the lines of the facts that George Tenet asked you personally to go through everything the CIA had about Osama bin Laden and Saddam Hussein and see if there were connections there, and that you told him, and presumably he told Bush and Cheney, that no such connections exist.
Well, that's exactly right. But I don't want to take all the credit to myself. I led a small team of officers who did it. It would have been an overwhelming task for one individual, and the team performed very well. Frankly, I don't know what Tenet told the president on that. I know we did the research, the analysts wrote the paper, and the paper said there was no evidence of a connection.
And you had to contradict what you had written in your previous book, Through Our Enemy's Eyes.
When we revised Enemy's Eyes, we put in 3 or 4 paragraphs in italics explaining that I was dead wrong and why I was dead wrong.
Now, you've criticized the candidates, at the top of this hour or the top of this interview, and also in recent writings and on TV. Someone told me, I saw a former CIA guy on TV saying that Osama bin Laden could not be more pleased with the choices for president that we have right now. Is it really your expert opinion as a former chief of the CIA's bin Laden unit that bin Laden couldn't be more pleased with the choice of Obama, Clinton, or McCain to be the next president of the United States?
Yeah, I think when you sift the 20 candidates down to 3, the only one he would have been afraid of is Ron Paul.
Okay, now wait a minute. Ron Paul just wants to wave the white flag of surrender. How could that possibly be right, Michael Scheuer?
Well, Scott, you and I have talked before. The only indispensable ally bin Laden has is the status quo in our foreign policy. Ron Paul was the only anomaly in that group of 20 people. The people he has left, bin Laden has left running for the presidency, are all joined at the hip with the Israelis, are not going to make the American people bite the bullet and do something about energy. They're therefore going to continue to support the Saudi tyranny. The status quo is going to be, and that we're going to remain in Iraq for the next 4 years. So I think in all circumstances he would surely prefer John McCain. They've discussed in their literature before that they don't like Democratic presidents because they're wishy-washy in their public language and it sometimes misleads Muslims. So I think rhetorically he would have a preference for McCain, but any of the 3 of them are perfectly acceptable to Osama bin Laden, and he'll be delighted to have them at 1600 Pennsylvania. Okay,
now this is rewinding a little bit, but this cuts really right to the heart of what we're dealing with here in the first place, and the tactic that's being employed here. I actually thought after September 11th, boy, that bin Laden's an idiot. If he thought this was going to, scale the empire back, this is only giving it a kick in the ass. And then I later found out, I guess first from reading James Bamford's book, A Pretext for War, that they said very publicly, I guess Zawahiri specifically, that they thought that the United States was already at war with them through the puppet dictatorships and so forth in the region. And that what they wanted to do basically was to slap us in the face so hard that the United States would come and do a full-scale invasion of Afghanistan where they could recreate the war against the Russians and bleed our empire dry. That, as Ron Paul said, they are delighted that we invaded Iraq, the hoped-for but unexpected gift, and that we are bogged down in the sand there. That's really what they want, is for us to overreact to everything they do. Is that it?
I think that's exactly right. Bin Laden gave an interview just after the bombings of our embassies in August of 98 in East Africa. And he said, I hope this encourages you to come to see us in Afghanistan, where we will teach you the same lesson we taught the Soviets. And that was 98 when he said that. And I'm sure he was very frustrated when we first got there because he finally got us on the ground and we kind of stayed in garrison. But now things are increasingly going their way. We're going out in more combat missions, so there's more people being killed. The Afghans are beginning to view us as occupiers. So the things in Afghanistan took a long time for al-Qaeda to get on track, but they're on track at the moment.
And it really doesn't matter if somebody drops a Hellfire missile from a Predator drone on this guy's head. He's gotten what he wanted anyway, which is America bleeding itself to death in the Middle East, while at the same time radicalizing the people of the Middle East and increasing their view of how intolerable their local dictatorship is, et cetera, et cetera.
I think that's exactly right. I think Scotty, his goal has been achieved, basically. His life's work is done, if you will. He can die comfortably, but only because we invaded Iraq. He had such an uphill battle to try to get this done that had we not invaded Iraq and had we made a first-class effort in Afghanistan, It may well have been we could have put a stop to this, but now the horse is clearly out of the barn.